Hello everyone, the new Toaplan collection has arrived, sneaking onto Steam, and I almost forgot about these releases until a few weeks ago when some of you reached out and asked, hey, are you going to talk about the Toaplan games? And I thought, well, I probably should because I'm a fan of Out Zone and I've been wanting to see a port of that for a long time. And also, my name is Mark, and so I'm contractually obligated to talk about Truxton, and so those are the two games we'll be mostly focusing on in this video. But I was also intrigued because from what I'm able to gather, Bitwave are a brand new company. So this is their first project, their first time bringing arcade ports to PCs. And especially since M2 don't do a lot of PC ports and City Connection aren't exactly all that great with their PC ports, I was very curious to see what this new actor was bringing to the table. Especially when you looked at their website and their marketing, they really seem to be focusing on stuff that I care about, like low input lag, save states, practice modes, all the stuff that I like to see, because when it comes to ports, it's pretty interesting how different companies can approach them. For example, the TMNT Cowabunga collection, which I reviewed, is an approach that really focuses on presentation and packaging and nostalgia extras and little tidbits here and there. Oh, look at the box art, look at the concept art, look at the soundtracks, you know, all these sort of extras and peripheral stuff around the game, which for the most part, I'm really not all that interested in. And I'm much more interested in how the game plays technically, how it performs, what gameplay extras are you bringing to the table? Are you giving us new modes? Are you giving us stuff we can play with? Customizable stuff in terms of hitboxes and damage and all the kinds of crazy things that M2 Shottriggers do. And for the most part, we rarely see that with most ports and collections. Like I said, it's all about the presentation. What ends up happening is my contemporaries and peers love that sort of stuff, and they give the Cowabunga collection these glowing reviews. And here I am being much more negative and critical, and that is almost always the way it goes with these releases. But this time around, the shoe might be on the other foot because Bitwave are focusing in on all the features and things that I care about, and are neglecting the other aspects of porting that most companies pay attention to and are more versed in. So this could be an interesting rare occasion where I'm more positive, because when it comes to more homebrew style presentation and sort of buggy features, I'm actually much more tolerant of that than many of my peers. So I thought it'd be good to get my bias and taste out on the table, because I don't want to downplay the problems with this port or pretend like there aren't issues. And I am going to talk about what other players are complaining about, but at the same time, a lot of these complaints don't really bother me as much as they seem to bother other players. And so just keep that in mind. I am pretty tolerant to some of these bugs that most people talk about. So if they sound like deal breakers to you, I still want to report them, but I don't find them to be as big of a deal as other players seem to think. So let's begin by talking about the positives of these ports, because they are doing a lot of really cool stuff, even if there are some issues, which we'll talk about after this section. So the positives, the first one is absolutely the responsive input lag. So I busted out the old light and camera setup, put it on the CRT. I did my input lag tests, just 2 frames of input lag. That is really impressive. And for reference, I also swapped over to Mushihime-sama, another really responsive port. That's only 2.5 frames of input lag on the same setup. And so that is really great performance of Out Zone, because this is a port of an arcade game. And what often happens is when we get arcade game ports, especially older ones like this for whatever reason, they tend to be very laggy and sludgy and awful feeling. I'm thinking of all the Metal Slug ports on Steam. Dear God, I shudder at the thought of it. But when I was gathering footage for this review and going through and playing the games, I was having a lot of fun. I was having a great time, and primarily because I just love responsive, visceral gameplay. I love when I move my arcade stick, the character moves. Not I move the arcade stick and then I wait and then he moves and then I move it again and then he walks into a bullet. So I was really, really happy with the responsiveness. I think they did an excellent job there, and I think it is one of the main highlights of the release. Another big highlight of the release for me, though, was the save state system. And this might be, again, a little bit because I'm more tolerant than other people, because the save state system, when you first look at it, it does seem a little shmup mamey. You know, it does seem a little hacky. Maybe all the days playing shmup mame have made me tolerant to this type of thing. But the way it works is it has 12 quick save slots that you can do on the keyboard. I'm not a keyboard player, so forget that shit. It has a save state menu. And the way the save state menu it works is actually pretty funny. It has the quick save slots at the top, quick load slots at the bottom, and then it has save and load. And when you go to save and load, you can basically have, at least from what I've been able to gather, unlimited save states using this. So you click it, you save it, you can name it, and then you can load it, or you can just save it and it gives it a number and you can load it. And I tested it. It goes beyond 30. I'm suspecting it's 9,000 or however many you want it to go. And so at first it seems like this is a very clunky, crappy save state system because you go to save, then it's got to generate the number, and it has like the bin extension at the end. And I know some people are gonna be like, ew, file name extensions at the end, gross. I'm kind of charmed by it. Like I said, I kind of like homebrew type of stuff, so I think it's kind of cute. I almost wonder if it would work better if the developer just leaned into the homebrew thing a little bit more. Like they had the UI look like Windows 95, Windows Vaporwave sort of presentation to the menus. I think that might be a little bit more charming rather than, you know, the generic sort of arcadey type of thing. I think the presentation of this port, not to get too ahead of myself here, but I think the presentation of the port is a little bit in between. It's like trying to be commercial and sort of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in terms of the fonts and the backgrounds, but it's not well done, so it looks really amateur. But at the same time, I think if they just stripped that back and went with a more minimalistic programmer, straight up Windows 95 sort of vibe, I think it would work maybe a little bit better. But anyway, getting back to the save state system, the way it works when you really get the flow for it is you're going through and you can make all these very specific save states throughout the game, but then you can quick load into them because what you can do is you can, let's say you save on stage 3, and then you go to the quick load menu and then you save in the quick save slot, and then you can just instantly load back into that quick save slot. But then when you're ready to get into stage 4, you do a save at the bottom with stage 4, and then you can go up in the quick save slots and then do the minutia of the saving and loading. So it takes a bit to get used to, and I think if they really cleaned up how the UI worked and made it a little bit more user friendly, I think people would really connect with it. But what is good about it is that it is very versatile, and it is in fact more versatile than the M2 Shottrigger save state system. Now, the M2 Shottrigger save state system looks fantastic and it's really cool, and when you hold the load and save state button, it has like a little timer and everything. It's very clean, but it's very limited. And for me right now, when I'm going to my Ketsui Emote practice and I'm trying to do 2 loops, 30 slots, that is not enough. I need more slots. And I can imagine someone's playing Out Zone or Truxton and they're trying to do the Jamers and do like 9 loops for 2 hours or whatever. That is going to be a lot of save states. So this port does have a robust save state system, but that being said, it's not super well done UI wise. You kind of need to be someone who's familiar with how save states work. And then also, I don't think you can delete out save states within the actual game itself. So you go through and you make a bunch of dumb save states and you got like 50 of them and you have to scroll through all 50. I don't think in game you can delete them. I think you probably have to go into the Steam folder and delete them from within the Steam folder. So that's something they could really look into, is managing the save states in the UI a little better, cleaning up how it works a little better. But the fundamental system is good. And that's what we'll see with this port all the time, is like the fundamental idea is good. It's just the way it's done isn't exactly QA tested. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of the save state system. I'm a big fan of the low input lag. The other thing that I'm a fan of that does need some patching is the practice mode. So you pop into practice mode and it does look a lot like the Donanpachi Mr. Trainer. And I almost wonder if that was a bit of inspiration for them. But yeah, so you can go in, you can change the values and all that sort of stuff. And it does work pretty well, except for the fact they forgot the speed power-up select. Patch that in, people. That is a fundamental problem, because let's say you're going into loop 6 and you're going in at default speed. You're not going to be having a fun time. So they got to get that speed power up in there. But other than that, it's pretty cool. And I did test it out. You actually can save state within the practice mode. And so what's really nice is if you want to just jump around within the game, you want to go to stage 6, then you want to go to stage 2 and loop 3 and, you know, all the loops and stages. using this practice mode, you can jump around really quickly in between all that stuff rather than having to do it through a very methodical save state system. You can just hop around with the practice mode and then do save states within the practice mode, which is pretty sweet. But they just need to add in that speed power up. And again, the UI, it looks like the Mr. Trainer, you know, it needs to be a little bit more snazzy probably for people. And then the next thing that I think is really interesting is they have the assist menu. And the assist menu is basically custom mode that you'd see in M2 Shottriggers ports. And some of the stuff in here is actually pretty cool. The one that really stands out to me though, and I think is a real selling point for this port, is the hitbox reduction. You can make the hitboxes smaller. All the footage you see in this gameplay, I am playing with a smaller hitbox. And you can say, oh, that's not valued on the leaderboards. You can't do score attack with that. I don't care. I don't plan to play Out Zone or Truxton for score and leaderboards. But I am so happy to play these games with reduced hitboxes, because if you haven't played Toaplan games before, the hitboxes are the size of trucks. And so if you're a bullet hell player, even a Psycho player, and you come into Toaplan games, it feels like your hitboxes are huge. And so the ability to trim down that hitbox size, it may seem like a small detail to a lot of people, but to me, I think that's another real selling point of this port. And it makes me think, what if Zero Dev had stuff like this for Gunbird? Like you could change the hitbox location in the Gunbird port. How much better and more fun the game would be with just something like that. And then also another thing you can do is show hitboxes mode, so you can see the hitboxes, you can see your character and the enemy hitboxes. That's actually really useful for studying the game. And I would love to see this in more ports as well. Like imagine a Dodonpachi port comes out in the future and you can see the hitboxes and you can see, oh, there's the bullet hitbox, there's that. So I really like the show hitboxes feature, though I think there might be some kind of crazy bug with it, because one of the boss fights, I was like literally running into the hitbox display. Like, I'll show the footage here, but that was pretty crazy. So I think they need to figure something out with that. Again, good idea, but you probably need to patch it. So then after that, we have the leaderboards. I didn't mess around with the leaderboards too much. From what I understand, talking to Jamers about it, it's way too split up, it's way too janky, and you can put things on there you're not supposed to. I think the leaderboards just need an overhaul overall. Having a bunch of split categories to me isn't great, so if you have all these redundant splits, you need to try and merge them and make it as cohesive as possible, because what you want is a really well-populated leaderboard. The best leaderboard of all time, in my opinion, is the Devil Daggers and Hyper Demon leaderboards, where not only is everyone playing the same game, everyone's playing the same scoring system, but also the game just automatically places runs onto the leaderboard. So even people who are playing casually are on the leaderboards. And so they have these really dense, well-populated leaderboards. And so when you get a PB in Devil Daggers and you move up 1,000 places, it is exciting and meaningful, and it makes the score play really engaging. More shmups need to do this, and this is something I think the port should look at, is just automatically registering stuff, making it work, and trying to merge it together as much as possible. And so then we can talk about the video options. I personally found the video options to be very satisfying and versatile, because as you saw from the lag test, I played the game on a CRT. And what's crazy is some modern ports don't play nicely on my CRTs. Like there's some games I literally can't play on my CRTs because they don't get along with lower resolutions and all that sort of stuff. And I saw you can go in and change the frame rates and really configure it. It has rotations and it can rotate all 4 directions. It has different video filters and everything. I thought the borders look kind of bad, and the gadgets are essentially useless, by the way. I thought this was going to be a real selling feature, but all the information displayed in the gadget is pretty much useless. So I think that covers most of the positives of this release. You're going to get low input lag, responsive gameplay, which I consider very important. You're going to get a robust selection of save states that are a little janky in the way they're done, but they do work. I also consider that very important. Then on top of that, you're going to get some fun extras like the ability to shrink your hitbox or see enemy hitboxes and play with hitboxes on. I think that's pretty sweet as well. And so now it's time to talk about the issues of this port. Like I said, some of these don't really bother me all that much, but some of them are legitimately big problems, and the developers need to get on patching them right away. And you can decide for yourself if you find these to be deal breakers or not. And so I decided to get the most robust feedback I could. I approached Jamers on the topic because he is an Out Zone master. The guy has counterstopped the game and played it for 2.5 hours straight. He knows this game really well. So he's been able to point out a lot of problems of the port that weren't immediately obvious to me. And so here we are, a list of issues of this port as prescribed by Jamers. So first of all, they seem to be using the wrong ROM for Out Zone. It's like this old prototype ROM that has missing secrets and some different enemy placements and stuff. And so they need to get that updated. And I did ask, oh, if you go in and change like the region, if that changes anything. But Jamer said, no, they need to actually change the ROM set to the correct one. They're emulating an old outdated ROM. And then on top of that, all the dip switches are messed up. So the difficulty is supposed to be defaulted to B, but on the port, it's defaulted to C. I wonder if that was intentional or not, but yeah, so it's a little bit too easy in terms of the dip switches, and then all the extend settings are kind of screwed up, and I think they're even missing an extend setting of every 300k, so they need to get that patched. And then of course the one that really stands out to Jamers, and I think it's going to stand out to a lot of players, apparently the audio is an absolute mess, both in terms of music and sound effects. And the reason why I said this didn't bother me so much is I actually rarely listen to game audio these days when I play. I usually have like soundtracks going on, or I'm listening to something else or other. So I'm not a really good informant on if the audio sounds good or not. But according to Jamers, it's got a lot of problems. And I know a lot of people play these games for the audio, and the audio is super important to a lot of players. So they need to get this patched ASAP, and I could see this being a deal breaker for some players. Absolutely. For me, it's not, because I actually don't listen to the games when I play them, but I can see it being an issue for other people. Another big issue is that the game runs too fast. About 10% was Jamer's estimation. Basically, it's Dodonpachi syndrome, where Dodonpachi runs at 57 frames, Out Zone runs at 57 frames, and this port is running at 60 frames by default, so it's running too fast. And the thing about this is I'm kind of divided on how I feel about this, because with some games like Dodonpachi, missing that slowdown is a huge game-breaking problem, because the entire game is balanced around the slowdown. And so it makes doing chains, and it makes basically your base gameplay a broken mess if that slowdown isn't there. That's mostly cave games. But other games, removing the slowdown is like awesome. For example, Metal Slug. Whenever I play Metal Slug, I actually overclock it 200% to remove the slowdown. So for me, I think it's a bit of a toss-up, because Out Zone and Truxton aren't exactly bullet hells. So them running a little bit faster, I don't think is as game-breaking as something like Dodonpachi. But at the same time, I know that if people are playing for score, or if they want a really authentic arcade experience, they're going to want it to be absolutely perfect in terms of frame rate. So my suggestion would be that the developers do what the Mr. Devs do, which is you have the 60 FPS mode, which runs a little bit too fast, but it's smooth, or you do like a G-Sync true frame rate mode, where it runs at 57 frames a second, and some people's monitors will get crazy and mad about it, but if you have G-Sync or a CRT, it works perfectly well, and have that be an option in the options menu. I think that's a good solution for that. And so continuing the audio issues, apparently when you play practice mode, it only plays the stage 1 theme. Like I said, I don't listen to the game music, so I probably wouldn't have even picked up on that. But yeah, you better like that stage 1 theme if you're in practice mode. That's pretty bad, guys. They got to get that patched, absolutely. And like I said before, the gadgets aren't really all that useful. I don't even use them. I instead put on like the music display gadget. I think that one's the coolest. But if they want the gadgets to be useful, they should have them include something like a C item counter, because that's much more important than how many bullets you shot or whatever the gadgets are reporting right now. And then also, as I said before, the presentation of the UI is not aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't have a sense of design. It's not appealing to the eye at all. It does seem sort of jumbled and all over the place, and sort of like in development. and then someone knocked on the door. They're like, oh, you got to release the game. And they're like, oh, crap. Okay, let's get this out. It just doesn't have that nice, polished, professional feel to it. And that does go a long way. In fact, when I do port reviews these days, I'll often point out, oh, the UI looks really nice, or the options menu looks really nice, or even the backgrounds of the menu look really nice. In this game, it just has this pop-up menu that looks debug mode. And like I was saying before, maybe the developers should embrace that and change the aesthetic of the port to be sort of like you're playing DOS or Windows 98 or something, just to give it a bit more of a vibe. So overall, what is my conclusion with these ports? I would say if you're like myself and you don't really mind homebrew type presentation and a good deal of bugginess, and you really value low input lag and save states, if those are your main bread and butter, and for me, low input lag, save states, that really goes a long way with me, I think these ports are worth checking out. But at the same time, if you're concerned about audio issues, this is going to be a tough one for you. If you're concerned about the game running a bit too fast, that's going to be a problem for you. If you're concerned about the ROM being kind of the wrong ROM, that's going to be tough. I could see that being a problem for a lot of players who want to stick with more accurate emulation. So overall, I would say that the safe bet is to wait for the developer to patch all these issues and pick it up in a more polished, professional form. But if you want a quick and dirty run through with a smaller hitbox and low input lag and save states, that it does deliver that. So it is a really interesting release, and what I'm hoping is that this can be kind of a learning lesson for the developer, so that when they're doing the future ports, they're not hitting these same hurdles and having these same struggles. And so before I end the video, I'd like to remind everyone that the t-shirt drive is still going on. We got about 2 weeks left. If you want to get a shirt and support the channel, I would really appreciate that. Just check out a link in the video description. Just 2 more weeks and then I send the orders in, and that's it. So thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, tell all your friends. Adios, everyone. So thank you to the $5 patrons, 100, accepting Panda, Alexander Pfeiffer, Dingo, Another Joe, Anthony A, Aaron Solis, Arrow Viper, Bo, Ben, Beto Dames, Borgie22, Brian Shiver, Chase Palumbo, Chato Maltese, Chris Yuzefovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Climby Coyote, Coast, Color Boy, Cooksan666, Cook Some Soup, Corey Mark, Des Audio, Danchi, Darren Griffin, Datrot, Delta Tango 6, Disco Stas Leia, DJ420 Praise It, Eric H, Fantaside, FCK, Francisco, Full Set, Retro Shmupper, Jake Ryan, JLab, JB RPG, John Kelly, Gameboy Guru, K, K2, Khalil Reedy, Contain, K-Horse, Larridge, Malaise, Matt O'Leary, The Goddamn Milkman, Maz, Megadeth859, Minung, Mechalin, Michael Stum, Mitchell Y, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, Neon Dagger Games, Okla Kugels, Psycho Blizzard, Rattlecat, Raul, Real Skeen, Riff Mason, Rolf015, Sarah, Scanline City, Seesaw SDG, Shmup Junkie, Sarah Pong, Steve Fiction, Street Magic, Superfunk, Takero Mucho, The Boot Rex, The Dirty Screech, The N1, The Old Bensta, TRM, Sugumo, Tuwayu, Twilight EX, Unikoi Roots, Vic Viper, Wabby Legs, X20 Spec, Boghog, and Utakaya. Thanks for watching.